new laws to correct this. We need respect for the laws already in place. Yesterday, the President created the Office of Management and Budget to be part of the presidency. Another layer and another institution meant to strengthen the presidency and weaken existing legal ones. We have the information that Anne Waiguru, who was recently quoted as asking to be given light duties, is destined to be appointed to head that office. She will be de facto treasury boss and head of the civil public service. Waiguru is yet to be cleared of corruption allegations. Now she is poised to head the country's entire budget allocation as a light duty. The creation of that office defies a constitutional provision that the National Treasury prepares the budget and the Cabinet Secretary submits it before the National Assembly. Mr. President, 1/3 of your cabinet is currently embroiled in corruption scandals. As opposition, we have enough material to put into question the integrity of at least another 1/3 of the entire cabinet secretaries. Our position, therefore, is that the government as currently constituted is dysfunctional. The time has come for the President to dissolve the cabinet and appoint a new one and subject any persons retained from the former cabinet to a fresh round of parliamentary vetting. Last Sunday, the Cabinet Secretary for Devolution, Madam Anne Waiguru, resigned. We congratulated her for that. It is not enough to resign. The government must subject the NYS and the IFMIS projects to an independent audit for all expenditures entered into since April 2014. And I think they can even go back to the days when, you remember, the budget had a 1 billion shilling hole. This needs to be also investigated. The government must also subject all major expenditures entered into by this administration to independent audit, including the Galana irrigation scheme. Action, not words. The government must also put in place a credible mechanism to conduct lifestyle audits of all state officers and senior public officers. The government must identify all public offices that are hotspots for high-level corruption, particularly every state office and public officers heading departments in procurement, in accounts, and audit. All the holders of those offices must be placed under continual surveillance of their financial transactions and that of their families. We long questioned how some public officers are able to raise and spend 10 million shillings on Arambis every week, yet their salaries and their businesses are well known. We demand action and answers. Action, not words, Mr. President. I thank you.
We've got a question.
This document, I'm sure, is available for circulation.
But
yes, sir.
Independent investigations for the treasury bosses. How independent? Who do you want to constitute in the board that will investigate, if there will be a board or something like that?
We don't need a board. We have institutions. We have even international institutions with credible offices locally, like Pride, White House, proper water, Interpol, and others.
In case the cabinet secretary and the principal secretary they don't resign, does court have any mechanism through parliament possibly to start motion of
They might probably say famously, "We'll never resign, can never resign." But this Eurobond money, the intention was to make sure that there's cheap money for Kenyans to borrow. Well, personally, I have a lot of respect for Governor at the central bank right now. He seems to be the only one you cannot handle, because he goes to Strathmore and you know, he lives as a monk. It's proper that the Pope is actually coming. We need more people like that. But what is he doing? What are the others doing below Mr. Njoroge? 289 billion shillings.
Do you have a motion of impeachment
Well, I leave that at the moment, one step at a time. We had to bring this to the attention of our fellow Kenyans. And as I said last night, what actually transpired at State House was to sanitize the atmosphere ahead of the arrival of the Holy Father. Pengine ndugu yangu ataongea kwa Kiswahili basi. Yeah. For Musa.
You know, about 10 years ago in Ireland, the police were looking for an IRS suspect. They traced him in the house in the backyard of the Attorney General. They established that the Attorney General did not in fact know that this suspect was in his compound. He promptly resigned and left office. Here in Kenya, we are faced with impudence of unparalleled proportions. And to answer this gentleman's question as to how Rotich and Tuge can leave office, you know how Anne Waiguru has left office. We didn't go to parliament to get her out of office. We will just sustain a momentum that Kenyans will see and know. But what is very important, as I add to what my brother has said, is what the president is doing is not fighting corruption, but appearing to be fighting corruption. This appearance is being set up to hoodwink important visitors, including the head of my church, the Catholic Church, the Pope, coming into Kenya, that indeed there's a president who will go there to take a holy sacrament and appear to be fighting corruption. He isn't. He said he's going to bring a law to protect whistleblowers. We already have the Witness Protection Act to protect witnesses, including whistleblowers. We want to see action. A priest friend of mine used to tell me that show me your friends and I'll tell you who you are. When the president is announcing all these extravagant issues about corruption, you look at the people standing next to him and around him and you ask yourself whether he should not start with those around him if he's fighting corruption. And we want to have no sacred cows in this country. We, as the alternative government, have repeatedly said, and we want to continue saying, that in the war against corruption, we should not spare anybody. Whether that person is sitting on our side or on the other side, they are the enemies of the people of Kenya. And Mr. President, you took an oath to defend, to protect, to uphold the Constitution, and that includes every single chapter in the Constitution, including ethics, including integrity. We want to see action. We don't want to hear flowery statements that mean nothing. Thank you.
Well, I just want to add to what my colleagues have said. You remember some years back in Korea, a ferry sank and several students died. 400. The Minister for Transport took responsibility and resigned. A few years earlier in India, a train had an accident, derailed, and several passengers died. Again, the Minister for Transport took responsibility. He was not the driver of the train. Neither was the Korean one, the ship captain or pilot. So taking responsibility does not mean that you are personally responsible, but you are collectively responsible because you are the head of the ministry that is in charge. So that is what we are trying to tell this government, that people ought to take responsibility. If Eurobond was raised under your charge, money was raised and was banked somewhere, contrary to the provisions of the law, that all that money needs to first come into the consolidated account before it can be spent. then you must take responsibility. You must bear responsibilities, you must be in charge and be responsible and resign in the public interest. Secondly, we need to know where this money went to. Such huge sums of money cannot go unnoticed. If that money was used in our economy, you would feel its effect. We spent 30 billion shillings to construct the Thika highway, and people could feel it. You can even see it on the ground. I have myself been in charge of an infrastructure ministry in this country. I know what that kind of money would mean if you gave it to me to do roads in this country. You ask yourself, which projects did the Ministry of Devolution do with that money? Was it digging trenches in Kibera, or in Mkuru kwa Njenga, or in Obunga and Nyalenda and Kisumu? These are questions that must be answered to Kenyans. The other one is not, we don't need many more new institutions. When the president tabled the list of shame in Parliament and said that he was drawing the line, he got actually an ovation in Parliament. But a few days later, they started the process of dismantling the Anti-Corruption Commission, which had been given the responsibility of carrying out investigations within 60 days. 2 weeks later, 2 commissioners resigned. They were told either you accept diplomatic appointment, one to go to Brazil, or we are going to set up a tribunal. Mr. Matemu was eventually forced out of the office. How then do you expect that commission to carry out investigations when there are no commissioners? That's why we are talking about actions, not words. Because in the Anti-Corruption Commission is only a commission if there are commissioners who enjoy security of tenure, not technocrats who can be whipped by politicians and told, shika fulani, you're going to shika. Last year, we all followed the case going on in a British court, the so-called Chicken Gate, when British officials of a company, Smith and Usman, were charged with engaging in a corrupt act by bribing officials of the Electoral Commission and the Examination Council to get a contract. Evidence was adduced. They even produced bank accounts, a statement of bank accounts from our own banks here in court to basically make the point that yes, these people are involved in an act, people have been bribed. Even the names of the Kenyan officials who are bribed are there in British court record. Up to date, our Anti-Corruption Commissioner is saying they are investigating. They have not found any evidence to do anything else. Mr. President, you know these people, they are around here. So you don't need any more laws to arrest people whose names have been mentioned in a court of law in England, whose their accomplices are now rotting in the British jail. These people are walking straight here. All of them are keeping on pronouncing their innocence here. This basically shows you that there is no commitment to fight corruption. It's all public relations exercise. And it's a pity that the private sector is being drafted into all this game here. Everybody knows that it takes two to tango. Everybody knows that wherever there's an act of corruption, there must be a giver and a taker. You don't need a task force to go and come and tell you the obvious. All of us know that. So we are saying that there is no commitment to fighting corruption. And that's why we're still telling Mr. President, yes, we are now happy that you have reported on duty. Because 3 weeks ago, you've asked you to report on duty. But Mr. President, now this is the direction you should take. Begin by cleaning the cabinet and make sure that those who have been involved face the law. Ungesema tuseme kwa Kiswahili. Baraza la tumeongea siku ya leo juu ya mambo ya ufisadi. Manake jana Rais Uhuru Kenyatta alitoa taarifa juu ya ufisadi na akasema ameanza ukurasa mpya katika vita ya kupambana na ufisadi katika taifa letu. Lakini tumesema hapa kwamba hatujaona ishara. Tumesema yale ambayo yamesema jana ni maneno ambayo yamekuwa pale, kwa hivyo mambo ni yale yale. Maana yake sheria ziko. Tumesema hakuna upungufu wa sheria ya kupambana na ufisadi. Ile ambayo inakosekana ni nia na lengo na shabaha ya kupigana na ufisadi. Ndio sababu jamaa wako pale. Tumesema kulikuwa na njama ilikuweko na pesa inaonekana imepotea. Ile pesa ambayo walienda wakakopesha katika soko ya pesa kule Ulaya ambayo inaitwa Eurobond. Hiyo pesa hatujaona dalili ilienda wapi. Hatujaona mfano wote kuonyesha kwamba hiyo pesa iliingia kwenye uchumi wetu. Wanawake wanasema ilitumika kwa kujenga miundo msingi. Na tumesema kama ni miundo msingi tuonyeshwe. Kama ilijenga bandari, ni bandari gani? Kama ilijenga reli gani? Kama ilijenga barabara gani? Manake tumeambiwa atilingia kwenye wizara ya ugatuzi na wizara ya mpango ya maendeleo. Tunataka tuelezwe hiyo wizara zimetumia hiyo pesa kujenga miundo msingi wapi? Kuchimba mitaro Kibira au kule Mkuru kwa Njenga au kule Madhare au Nyalenda na Ubunga kule Kisumu. Kwa sisi tunataka kujua. Na tumesema hiyo pesa ilitumika kinyume ya sheria vile imewekwa. Manake sheria na katiba inasema pesa yote ya serikali mpaka kwanza iingie kwenye hazina ya serikali. Ndio isahihishwe na yule ambaye amewekwa pale kama anasimamia mambo haya. Wakati huu ni Mama Agnes Odhiambo. Na Mama Agnes Odhiambo amemwambia kamati ya bunge ya kwamba hakuidhinisha tumizi hiyo pesa. Hajui vile hiyo pesa ilitumika. Hata kule ile account pale hiyo pesa iliwekwa, yeye mwenyewe hajajua, hata hajua ni wakina nani walikuwa wameweka kule kama waweka sahihi. Kwa hivyo tumesema waziri wa fedha na katibu wake mpaka wajibike, na kujibika kwa kujiondoa wakae kando, na iwekwe tume maalum, yani kampuni ambayo inahusika na mambo ya ukaguzi ya pesa, ikague kirasmi, iangalie hapa kwenye Central Bank, iende kule ngambo, itafute, ifufuke kila shimo, ijulikane hiyo pesa ilienda wapi, ilifanya kazi gani. Maana hiyo ni deni ambayo sisi kama Wakenya lazima tulipe. Hatutaki kulipa deni bila kujua hiyo pesa ilifanya kazi gani. Sisi tuna haki kama Wakenya kujua vile pesa yetu imetumika. Kwa hivyo waziri wa fedha toka leo tumemwambia bwana rais, tumepata ya kwamba zaidi ya thuluthi moja ya mawaziri wako sasa tayari wako kwenye baridi. Wametoka wote wana kashfa ya ufisadi. Tuna ushahidi ya kutosha kuonyesha kwamba thuluthi nyingine moja vile vile ni machafu. Kwa hivyo hakuna haja ya kujaribu kupiga kiraka. Nguo tayari imetatuka, nguo imekwisha. Kwa hivyo ununua nguo mpya, toa hawa jamaa wote, weka baraza la waziri mpya. Asante sana.
Maybe you need to add also the cost of this money, because the main story here is Eurobond. In trying to negotiate the terms of this Eurobond, the government position was initially 5.5% as interest on the Eurobond itself. But they still were able now to willingly accept 7%. And as if that is not enough, repayment, because this is very expensive money now, is biannually. Kila baada ya miezi sita. Now you can just begin to imagine the weight we are literally mortgaging even future generations. And if you add to the fact that even the repayment on standard railway gauge, we also take a similar toll in terms of earnings of this country, then you begin to see how highly indebted this country is. So we have a duty and a sense of responsibility. That's why we are calling attention to the President on these matters. Polemics. Polemics.
Whose blood?
The Minister for Irrigation, you said they received the money. Of course, they should tell you how they spent that money. But
14 billion,
at least that minister has owned. The bulk of that money, 45 billion, went to Ministry of Devolution. 24 billion went to Ministry of Planning. Those two ministries are not responsible for any infrastructural development. That's where the bulk of the money went to. So you follow up yourself as a media. Go to Ministry of Devolution. Let them show you the project they funded using that money. Let the Ministry of Planning show you which infrastructure projects they constructed using that money. That's the question we are asking. And that's the reason why we are saying the Treasury is being very economical with the truth. And we demand action. That's why we are asking the Minister, because he is incapable of satisfactorily answering those questions, to step aside with his peers. Not only because of this, but because also of the breach of the Constitution. That is that the money should not have been spent before it was first deposited in the consolidated account.
You can say something about the church.
Yeah?
Where we feel that when you talk about huge sums of money being churned out in the form of Harambee money, most of this, if you have noticed as Kenyans, is actually in support of some churches. And if we are going to win this war on corruption, we want to call on the Kenyan church, because after all they are the salt of the earth, to begin to question the legitimacy of the sources of this money given by whoever. Let's remember the days of the late Archbishop Gitari, Bishop Muge, Bishop Okulu, when the voice of the church was truly heard in this country. We feel it's our responsibility to call on the Kenyan church now to be part of this change and the fight against corruption. Because we don't hear any more of the very important pastoral letters that used to be written to all the faithful.
Yes.
And the government will be put on its toes. So this we thought is important. We'll have occasion to deal with this later.
One more thing that we need to add. You've heard the President direct that he wants to see lifestyle audits of public servants. We even saw some ridiculous process where a governor audited himself and went and gave a report of his personal audit to anti-corruption. We want to here and now ask the President to start the lifestyle audit of his deputy and all his ministers. You know very well that Harambees feed on corruption. That's why we brought devolution. That's why we brought CDF, to supplement the shortfalls of development in the countryside. When one of us goes around in one weekend contributing up to 25-30 million shillings to Harambees, even if you owned Barclays Bank or KCB, you don't spend money that way. Lastly, we are seeing another worrying trend of attempts to criminalize free speech in the country. We will not win the war against corruption if we do not embrace free speech. Because it is you, our brothers and sisters, journalists, who are giving people information on where the scam is. Politicians who stand on platforms and speak. We want to caution the government that we are ready, our battle of lawyers led by distinguished Senator James Orengo here, are ready to go to court every single day to defend the fundamentals of free speech and the right of Kenyans to know what is going on in our society and in the lives of all of us. Thank you.